Shaun King wrote a very interesting article in the Daily News. It's about sexting. Now, I know mostly everyone is familiar with sexting, but sexting is like texting, but you know, it's sexy texting, right? And it's something that people do. And unfortunately, for all of us who have teen kids, you know, there are some of our kids who are probably out there sexting as well. In the article, Shaun argues that it's actually a safer thing than them actually having sex. You know, I don't know if Shaun has teenagers, but no one, no one wants to think of their kids engaging in such risque behavior, whether it's via a phone or otherwise. What is interesting, though, and this has been an issue for the last several years, kids being criminally charged with with uh, with distributing child pornography, because technically being under 18 and sharing sexually explicit photos, technically per the statute, that's child pornography, technically, right? So distributing child pornography and possession of child pornography. And also, I'd also be interested to find out actually how these pictures were discovered to begin with. But anyway, so per the story that Shaun, recounted in his article, this young woman, she sent a racy video or pictures to a young man. They're 16 and 17 years old, both under 18, within a year, and there was an issue like several years ago with Romeo and Juliet laws. So like, even if the kids were both under 18, if they were too far apart in age or something like that, then that was a certain type of statutory rape that could also trigger, statutory rape charges. But also, with these charges, these land people on sex offender registry. When you're in a sex offender registry, like if you're living at home with your parents and you have younger siblings, you can't be around kids when you're a sex offender, right? If you guys live near school, so that when these happen to young people, it's very disruptive for their lives, right? And the question arises, should we be criminalizing what is ordinary, natural human sexual behavior, right? Because if they were both 18, so if he was a year older and she was 2 years older, there would be no charges involved. The law couldn't say nothing. The young man would not now be facing a felony if they were both just a little bit older. Well, Anoa, kids shouldn't be sexting. It's wrong. I get that. And as a parent, we do need to discipline our kids. But when we look at in the last 20, 30 years, and when we look at how we have rolled back on sexual education, we do not talk about sexual orientation. We do not talk about sexuality, not just sex ed, the basics, the birds and the bees type stuff. We don't even talk about sexuality, right? We don't talk about the emotional responsibility that's even involved in engaging and having sex and having these relationships with other people. We don't do that at all. I mean, some of us may do that personally as parents. Some of us may do that in our groups and our communities, but for the most part, as a society, we do not do that. And then we have so much exploitation of sexual images, conversation lingo. When we look at, the TV before 10 o'clock, as the Brits say, pre-Watershed television, is ripe with innuendo and just outright, statements and imagery. When we look at cartoons like Family Guy, even though it's not a kid's cartoon, still, I mean, we all know that cartoons appeal to younger people. So culturally, we have a corrupt culture. We exploit sexuality for money, for excitement, for entertainment. And then we say to kids, you can't do this, even though we all do it, even though we have TV shows where it's very prevalent. You can't do this, and we're going to possibly send you to jail and put you on the sex offender registry if you do. So what happened? So the 16-year-old girl, 17-year-old boy, they've sexted. She initiated, by the account, she initiated it. He reciprocated. Somehow the pictures are discovered. He gets charged, and the charge involves child pornography. Now, wait a minute. They both sent pictures. Yes, they both sent pictures, and this is Louisiana. He's the only one charged. Now, here's the kicker. She's white. He's black. So, yeah, draw your own conclusion. But I have a really serious issue with children being charged. Now, again, granted, it's very different if this is a malicious incident, right? It's very different if someone did something maliciously, right? So if I send out, like there's an SVU episode. I'm a junkie. I watch Law and Order, all of them. Not really Criminal Intent. I do watch SVU. But there's an SVU episode where when a young lady, she takes a picture of herself. She accidentally sent it to her her best friend. She accidentally sent it to her best friend, and then but she sent it to her boyfriend. Her boyfriend gets mad because he went through her phone and found out that she had sent it to somebody else too. So he sent it to the whole school. So in that instance, like if someone does something like that, like I'm going to embarrass you. So I'm gonna send out your picture to everyone else, or I'm taking this picture without your knowledge. Okay, I understand some type of punishment happening there. But then again, that seems like a situation where we need to have some type of community, something that's not like so punitive that we are potentially threatening their future. We're talking about teenagers. Teenagers, by all the studies out there, aren't even mentally mature, until they're like, you're not mentally mature until you're like in your 20s anyway, right? So it's really difficult for me to understand and grapple with how we criminally charge and punish children. Teens are still children. They still need our assistance. They still need, us to kind of guide them and let them know right from wrong. So my daughter, she's been around the block in terms of lawyers and law schools, stuff like that. So I think there was some talk about like law school, like sexting one time in school. She was like, look, let me tell y'all, my mom's a lawyer, and she said, nobody sex. If you ever get any, immediately delete them. You don't want to be charged with child pornography. And I laughed. She came home, switch you up. Yeah, I was telling everybody that they don't want to be child pornographers, and it's a felony, and you're going to be on the sex offender registry. Because there was an incident that happened, I guess, in the school had a different, and I think that's the other thing, like prosecutors have the discretion, right? Because when you look at what child pornography, and I know I'm going on and on about this, but I'm really actually passionate about this because this potentially can ruin this young man's life, right? This is like something that is, it's youthful indiscretion, right? And I'm not going to say kids will be kids, no big deal, but parents should talk to their kids, right? Parents should talk to their kids. Communities need to talk to the kids in the communities. We need to have principals. We need to have the community coming around children and helping them make wise decisions versus the community stepping in to punish children for making an unwise decision, right? Because this is a mistake. This is a mistake that could have been resolved with some stern talking to, maybe some community service, maybe having someone come in and talk about, sexual violence and things like that or whatever, and how serious and deep this really all is. Because I think that's what's missing from the conversation. We punish kids for exploring themselves sexually, but we don't ever really talk to them about the do's and don'ts or how you're supposed to go about things. So prosecutors coming down on children for child pornography, when it's like child pornography, like the law on child pornography was created to protect children, right? From people who would abuse them, from people who would the framers of the law, like it was not written to punish teenagers for exploring with each other. Like it really wasn't. I can only imagine, some of us, if the things we were told, I can only imagine how many of us would really have been, we didn't have sexting back in the day, we didn't have cell phones and stuff, but like how many of us, some of the stuff that you did as a teenager, as your parents don't know about, you locking people up, you're just, it's just ridiculous. I mean, there are instances where it's taken people's, scholarships on the table. And again, I'm not talking about things that are acts of aggression. I'm not talking about things that are like acts of rape. I mean, that's a completely different category, and it absolutely has to be taken seriously and addressed. But that's another conversation, right? And if he is charged and convicted of child pornography or some other lesser offense, that's still time on the sex offender registry. And child pornography is an automatic 25 years from the sex offender registry. This child will spend most of his adult life on the sex offender registry. What kind of job will he get? Right? Who's going to let him go to their school? It's so problematic. Now, there could be more to the story. This is based on the facts that I've read. But I've read several of these cases since about like 2010, 2011. There have been several of these cases. They've rounded up, and it also raises the issue of with searches and seizures, and this will be a whole other topic for another day, in terms of schools, and how schools are not just, we hear the term prison to pipeline when we talk about schools, but how schools also act as the intermediary at times for law enforcement in protecting the rights, constitutional rights of the youth involved. Because one case I had read previously, a few years back, there were, I think it was either a locker or it was backpack search or something of that effect. The principal decides to randomly go through the kids' phones and discovers, sexting type activity, text messages, things like that on several phones and hands it over to the police. You know, that type of seizure should be impermissible, because then based on that search by the school for one purpose and the principal then going through the kid's stuff and then gets turned over to the police, like people think they're helping, or I don't know what the thought process is. But to me, criminalizing kids when we have real criminals out there to be dealing with, when we have a real problem with protecting victims' rights, I mean, to me, that is where we need to be putting more of our effort and attention